Welcome to the beautiful Chorus Entertainment Building in downtown Toronto for another episode of the Legal Briefs Network. I'm Joseph Newberger, joined by my good friend Lauren Honickman.
Hello, Joe. How are you?
I'm good. You look great tonight.
Well, thankfully, I won't have to access the BC Medicare program, I guess, tonight.
Yeah, well, you don't need the private health care.
Well, not at this moment in time as we speak.
At some point I will, that's right. For sure. This is very interesting.
Big story that we want to talk about because it's really, many people say that this case that's happening out in BC right now is putting the future of Medicare, as we know it in this country, on trial. This is the case, Joe, about this doctor, Brian Day, and what he's done, and let me put on the specs. He's bringing a lawsuit to challenge the province's Medicare Protection Act, which prohibits doctors operating in public, private clinics, and here's the most important part, an embargo on private insurance.
Right.
So you can't go out and say, oh, the province isn't going to protect me here and pay for this doctor. I'm going to get my own insurance.
Yeah, and let's explain that for a second, because in Ontario we have private facilities. Sure. We won't name them, but there's private facilities you can go to. You have to pay out of pocket.
Out of pocket.
And you're not necessarily getting certain services from them, but you are being assessed. You can have certain services. But here, for example, knee surgery, you could have covered through the private plan, and you could in BC then, I guess the idea is to go out and buy private insurance from any private insurance company.
Right, like some from the U.S. that want to come up to Canada.
Right, dying to access the market.
That's right. And so the idea would be, what this is all about, it's about one word, access.
Right.
So out in BC, like here in Ontario, like out in PEI, right across this country, everybody has the same lament. Accessing the healthcare system. In fact, many people will say, Joe, and I'm sure the evidence is going to come out in this case, it's broken. It's broken.
Well, you just need to visit the emergency room of any hospital. They mean well, but you'll be sitting there for hours unless you're in an acute case.
Right.
And then if you need a certain surgery, which is not urgent or an emergency, you're waiting months or a year or 2 years to get that actual surgery. So the access is really lacking here. And unfortunately, our system is crumbling, even though millions and billions of dollars is being pumped into it. What I'm concerned about, and the way this is framed, is this is access for the public. And I believe the lawyer refers to the average Joe or Joan who doesn't have access to this private insurance because people who are extremely wealthy can access it or go to the United States.
So the argument is, if you can't have it, I can't have it.
Right, but can the regular Joe afford private insurance to cover it?
Let's say they
We
can't.
are taxed
Let's say
to
they
death
can't.
in this country.
Okay, so let's
taxed to death.
Well, let's say
I'm going to say that again. We are taxed to death, and our government mismanages our money on a reckless basis. And as citizens of this country, we are paying an exorbitant tax rate, not just what we pay the provincial for taxes or federal, but HST, if you own a home, property tax. And even then now, foisted upon the average person is to go out and get private insurance if they're successful to fill the gap because our government can't do the job and deliver health care the way we all deserve it.
Okay, so I agree.
It gets me a little
I agree with everything.
About
no,
this.
I agree with everything you're saying. But his argument is going to be that there's a constitutional challenge to this in the sense that there's an inequality. I can't get the health care when I need it. So why can't I do that? If it means that I do have the means to buy an insurance policy, to then be able to take to the doctor, so I can now get that MRI. In 2 months or 1 month rather than 7 months.
Or an hour.
Whatever it would be, then why shouldn't, I have the right to do that? Why do I have to say, well, listen, Joe, Joan, whoever can't afford that private health insurance, so therefore I'm going to be held back. I can't access health care. I have to now wait because everybody else has to wait.
And I can support your argument. Then you can say if those people are allowed to access private insurance and access the private system, that will take a burden off of the public system so that maybe the average person who has to rely on the public system will get access. But you know what? I think it just further breaks down the system because doctors are like anybody else. Yes, they care about their patients. Yes, they take the oath, but they also would like to make a living. And so this is a very good way to make a living. What I would like to see as an alternative in that is that the government has to have to pony up to pay for those services from a private clinic because they cannot provide it in a timely fashion, which is very much in the health and interest of a Canadian citizen, and therefore the government should pay for it with our tax dollars. We've already paid for insurance.
I know.
I want that money used properly.
But the system, the Medicare system, it's different. We're in a different time now than it was when it first came in, and I think we've got to understand that. Here's the other thing that's very, I'll tell you one thing I know for sure. This issue is not going to be decided in the first year of the Legal Briefs Network, in the second year, or the third, or perhaps even the fourth. Because let's be clear what happens here. This case is going to go at least, they have, I think, about 100 witnesses.
Yeah.
They're going to hear evidence. It's going to go to the new year. The judge will probably take, about 6-7 months minimum to make a decision. It'll eventually wind its way up to the Supreme Court of Canada.
Absolutely.
Because Medicare is on trial here. But here's the other thing that I'd like to throw out to you from the legalities of this.
Yeah.
Here in the province of Ontario, and I don't know what it's like elsewhere across Canada, as you said, here in Toronto, for example, there are private clinics.
Yep.
If you want to
All
go
over.
in there, all over. And you can spend, and I'll tell you what you spend, because at law firms that I was lucky to be associated with, they paid for the lawyers to be able to go.
Right.
So you're spending like almost over $2,000 a person sometimes. You go in there, you spend 5 hours, you have your blood tests at 8 in the morning, you get your results at 9, you have full access, you pay for it, you walk out of there and you go, was that access or was that excess? Whatever it is, it's running in this country now.
But this is why this is something we have to follow, and it has to have very careful scrutiny on it, because we've seen the problem with making a deal in this province with the doctors. We see how they feel about it. We think there's been misrepresentation by the health minister about how they look at doctors' revenue, not including their expenses in it. This is an issue that's not going to go away, but we got to address it head on in Ontario, because it is going to come to a crisis point. And we are going to have this battle between a private and a public system, and it has to work for all Canadians.
The interesting part about this lawsuit, like all lawsuits, I think this doctor brought this forward for the first time in 2010.
Yeah.
It's only taken about 6 years
Yeah.
to get to a courtroom, but it's emotional.
Talk about access.
Yeah, access to justice. That'll
another
be a
show.
different topic.
That'll
a
be
topic
for
the
our next
future.
show.
Yep.
Well, we'll come back to this on another episode. Thank you for joining us at the Legal Briefs Network. Until next time, I'm Joseph Newberger. Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you, Joe. Talk to you soon.